You walk into a packed elevator. You go silent. You stare at the numbers above the door like they're the most interesting thing you've ever seen. You don't know why. But the real answer is far stranger than politeness. Your brain is running a program older than language. It's not shyness, it's not manners. It's a survival calculation your ancestors ran 100,000 times before you were ever born. And it's still running right now, every time you step into a crowded room. Think about the last time you were in a full subway car or a packed waiting room or a crowded elevator. Your voice dropped. Your eyes found the floor. Your body got smaller. Why? Psychologists have a name for part of this. It's called de-individuation, first studied seriously by social psychologist Leon Festinger in the 1950s. Festinger found that when people are surrounded by others, especially strangers, their sense of individual identity starts to fade. You stop feeling like you and start feeling like a piece of the group. And here's the strange part. When identity fades, so does the instinct to stand out. Standing out, for most of human history, was dangerous. Picture a group of early humans moving across open grassland. 50, maybe 80 people. No walls, no weapons stronger than sharpened sticks. Every one of them scanning the horizon for movement, for a shape that didn't belong. In a group like that, blending in wasn't a social nicety. It was armor. A loud voice in a small band could scare off game before a hunt even began. A voice raised too often, too confidently, could also mark you as a threat to the group's fragile social order. Groups have always needed cooperation to survive, and cooperation runs on a delicate thing, nobody wanting to seem too dominant, too different, too loud. So your brain learned a rule. Crowd equals exposure. Exposure equals risk. Quiet equals safety. That rule didn't disappear when humans built cities. It just found new elevators to ride in. There's another piece to this puzzle, and it comes from a French agricultural engineer named Max Ringelmann, working all the way back in the 1880s. Ringelmann wasn't studying psychology. He was studying rope. He had groups of men pull on a rope and measured how hard each person pulled. And he found something odd. The bigger the group, the less effort each individual put in. One person pulling alone gave everything. Add 7 more people, and each person's individual effort dropped by more than half. Ringelmann had accidentally discovered something about human nature that would later be called social loafing. In a crowd, responsibility spreads thin. If everyone is pulling, no single failure is anyone's fault. If everyone is silent, no single silence is noticed. This is why you don't speak up in a crowded room, even when something feels wrong. You've probably heard of the bystander effect, most famously documented by psychologists Bibb Latané and John Darley in 1968, after a much-discussed case of a New York City assault that many witnesses reportedly failed to act on. Latané and Darley ran a series of experiments. In one, they staged an emergency, smoke pouring into a room, while participants sat alone or in groups. Alone, most people acted fast. They got up. They reported the smoke. In a group, people hesitated. They glanced at each other. They waited to see who would move first. And often, nobody did. Latané and Darley called this diffusion of responsibility. The more witnesses there are, the less any single witness feels responsible for acting. It sounds like a flaw. But zoom out far enough, and it looks a lot like an old survival rule wearing a new coat. In a group, watch first. Move only when the group moves. Don't be the one who reacts wrong. Being the one who reacts wrong in the ancestral world could mean being the one who gets left behind. Or worse, the one who gets blamed. Here's where it gets stranger. Your silence in a crowd isn't just about danger. It's about status. Anthropologists studying small-scale societies, hunter-gatherer groups that still live in ways closer to how humans lived for most of history, have observed something researchers call reverse dominance hierarchies. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm documented this extensively in his studies of egalitarian foraging bands. In these groups, anyone who acts too dominant, too loud, too eager to lead gets mocked, gossiped about, or quietly excluded until they fall back in line. Boehm's research suggests this wasn't an accident of culture. It was a deliberate, evolved strategy. Early human groups actively suppressed bullies and self-promoters because unchecked dominance threatened the group's survival. So the instinct to shrink in a crowd isn't weakness. It's a memory of thousands of generations where sticking your neck out, literally and socially, could cost you everything. Now picture the elevator again. Your ancestors didn't have elevators, but they had caves, they had river crossings, they had narrow mountain passes where strangers might be waiting, tight enclosed spaces filled with unfamiliar people. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a stranger from another tribe 80,000 years ago and a stranger in office clothes holding a coffee cup today. It just sees the pattern. Small space. Strangers. Stay quiet. There's a flip side to all of this, and it might be even more revealing. Social psychologist Solomon Asch ran a famous series of experiments in the 1950s, showing volunteers a simple, line-length comparison task. When alone, people got the answer right almost every time. It wasn't hard. But when Asch surrounded a volunteer with actors instructed to confidently give the wrong answer, something remarkable happened. About a third of real participants abandoned their own eyes and agreed with the group, even when the group was obviously wrong. Why would people override their own senses just to match a crowd? Because for most of human history, disagreeing with the group publicly wasn't just socially awkward. It could mean losing access to food, protection, mates, survival itself. Asch's participants weren't being irrational. They were running code written by 10,000 generations of ancestors who learned that agreement was often safer than accuracy. So the quiet you feel in a crowd and the conformity Asch documented are really two expressions of the same underlying rule. Don't be the outlier. The outlier gets noticed. And for most of human history, getting noticed by a group of strangers was a gamble you couldn't afford to lose. Here's the twist that should make you look at your own behavior differently. You think you're being polite when you stay quiet on a crowded train? You think you're just an introvert when a party overwhelms you? You think it's random when you feel the urge to check your phone the moment an elevator gets crowded, just to have something to look at that isn't another human face. But none of that is random. It's not really about you at all. It's a genetic transcript written under open sky, in small bands, under real threat, now playing out in fluorescent lighting and recycled air. Even the phone checking has a name now. Researchers studying modern crowd behavior have noted that people reach for devices in dense public spaces specifically to signal unavailability, a modern substitute for the averted gaze our ancestors likely used to avoid triggering unnecessary social tension. You're not avoiding eye contact because you're rude. You're avoiding it because eye contact held too long with an unfamiliar face in a confined space once meant something. Sometimes it meant challenge. Sometimes it meant threat. Your body still remembers, even when your mind has forgotten why. So the next time you're standing in a packed elevator silent, staring at the numbers, notice what's actually happening. Notice the quiet. That's not awkwardness. That's not shyness. That's not some flaw in your personality you need to fix. You walk out of the elevator, you go loud again. You laugh with a friend, you speak your mind, you're fully yourself. And you never noticed, until now, that the silence was never really about the elevator at all.